As many of you have heard, I'm sure that the ceasefire is now over, but they are still in the middle of negotiations in Egypt trying to extend it. Of course, Hamas said that they would not stop the bombing unless all their demands were met. And of course, as you know, Hamas did declare victory as usual in what I call Israel giving up in exhaustion of punching Hamas in the face. But of course, Hamas terrorists, they do not care how much the people of Gaza suffer. They're hiding under hospitals and under the churches and using their citizens as human shields. And what's shocking to me is that even though the international community realizes this is taking place, they're still blasting Israel for disproportional type force. And I just have to shake my head and say, listen, this is war, and that's the bottom line. You can't allow a country or a city or whoever, terrorist group, to shoot rockets off into your country. No nation would allow that to happen. As I've said many times, if the United States was getting bombed by Canada or Mexico or Cuba or whomever, you wouldn't hear one word out of anybody saying that the United States used disproportional force against any one of these countries. Nor France, nor England or Germany or any of them. Hard, blunt force is the only thing that many people understand, unfortunately. And as President Reagan said years ago, that we will keep America safe in peace through strength. When you start to bargain away strength, you might as well bargain away your whole country. But anyway, the war goes on. Hamas shot some 60 to 70 rockets off today. One of them did strike an Israeli building. There were a few injuries. And of course, Israel responded disproportionately with their military, as they should, and killed it. There were a few people that were killed. Several targets were hit. And I'm sure this will continue on until Hamas finally realizes that they're simply not going to win this war. Now on to another part of the Middle East, the move of ISIS or the Islamic State. There was an article that came out yesterday that said that ISIS had taken over a town in Lebanon, and it basically tried to give the idea that they were getting closer to Israel's borders. Well, the bottom line is they got to get through Hezbollah first. I mean, ISIS and Hezbollah are not friends. And in the article, Hezbollah did address ISIS, and they did say they're not going to get involved in such a small town that was taken over by ISIS. But if they did begin to become a threat, that Hezbollah definitely would take on ISIS. So that would pit one terrorist group against the other. And I think that if this were to take place, I think that Hezbollah would win fairly easily. One must remember that ISIS is a self-financed group. They don't have the likes of Iran or Saudi Arabia or some of these other countries funneling large sums of money into their war machines. And even though many in the prophecy world have got ISIS turned into some military giant, the truth of the matter is they're nothing more than a terrorist group. And the minute they heard that the United States was getting involved, they splintered off and decided attacking smaller, uncontested towns for which the Iraqi army was not known to be in that area. So yes, they are making grounds, but they're making grounds on insignificant, out-of-the-way places that are not heavily populated with Iraqi military personnel. And that's the same thing with Lebanon. Right now they're striking on Lebanon, but they're in smaller towns that simply don't have the firepower to overtake the ISIS terrorist group. But I would be shocked and amazed if they went any further into Lebanon and they did meet up against Hezbollah. I don't foresee that being the case. Now on to the Ukraine. There are many reports coming out that Russia is gearing up to take over Ukraine, or to basically to lead the charge against completely taking the country by storm. In fact, because the separatists have experienced significant losses, now the Russian military commanders are taking over these separatist armies and are leading them. But simply, this isn't a shock at all. What I am looking for is to see how the United States will react to this. Frankly, as far as Bible prophecy is concerned, it doesn't bode well for the United States intervening. I think that if, in fact, Russia does decide to take Ukraine, it will take Ukraine without much resistance from the United States. And I think that will lead to the emboldening of Russia to come down upon Israel. I think you're going to see not only the United States blink when they do take Ukraine, if in fact they do that, But that will prove to be the stepping stone that will bring Russia down upon Israel, and the U.S. and the West will blink again. So I frankly see Russia, if there is something that they are going to do, they will be successful, because the Bible says that they will do it again. So I think, based upon what the Bible says, I think that they will indeed march against the Ukraine and will take it. And of course, that's speculation on my part, but let's think about it. Backing down from the United States and other Western powers, they're not going to do that when they come against Israel. So why would they start with the Ukraine? Of course, that's again speculation, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But that's what I feel is going to happen. Now, that's my analysis upon the Russian-Ukrainian war. Now my analysis on what will take place from Israel and Gaza war. Well, certainly, if you have been keeping up with my prophecy reports, you know that I indicated that Israel, if they indeed did attack Hamas, they would only go so far and then they would back off. And that's exactly what has happened. Now, at this time, they are fighting through a ceasefire. And as I've said, I don't think Hamas really cares how much of Gaza gets blown to smithereens. They don't care about and never have cared about the people of Gaza. They just want to make sure that they remain relevant on the world scene. And even though their country, or whatever you want to call it, has been completely decimated, they have succeeded in their mission and are really more relevant than they've ever been. And not only that, as stupid as it sounds, the Gaza people and the Islamic world have found a newfound respect for Hamas. And so much the fact that I believe that that Israel's hands are literally tied as to how much and how far they can go. So what do I suspect for this war's end? I fully suspect that this will end up in a ceasefire, a long-term ceasefire, and that Israel will give away some concessions to Hamas. I don't know if they're going to open up the border blockades or the sea blockade, but it's not out of the question that they may release some prisoners and they may ease some restrictions. But make no mistake, this is a major concern for the international powers throughout the world. And as Bible prophecy goes, don't think for a second that this will not be a big problem for world peace when the Antichrist does come on the scene. It will be interesting to see how he persuades Hamas to come to the bargaining table and to bring peace with Israel. I know that sounds almost too crazy to say out loud, but the bottom line is that there will be peace. Now on to my analysis of ISIS. I don't believe that ISIS will march on any country that has an established military in the Middle East. And when I say established military, I mean countries like Israel or Jordan or Saudi Arabia or Egypt or the like. And frankly, I don't foresee them taking on Hezbollah either. Yes, they may take over to a few small towns in which military presence is not there, but they're not ready, nor do they want to confront any major military force. And frankly, it's hard to even know how this bombing campaign by the United States and possibly Britain and a few other nations who are considering bombing the ISIS terrorist groups throughout the Middle East, how they're going to react once this campaign is over with, or at least underway. This very well may send them back to where they're safest in their own little territory. And lastly, I forgot about Iran. I do believe that Iran is becoming a bigger and major player in the world of foreign affairs. As proven, they have played a major role in the Israeli-Gaza war and also in the nuclear negotiations of their own, and believe it or not, also in the Ukrainian war with Russia. So their sphere of influence is quite large, and it looks as though they do have a number of bargaining chips they can use against the West. And I suspect in their quest to have the West look the other way on a few issues. And of course, it will be at the expense of Israel. But I think it's beginning to be very obvious that the relationship between Israel and the United States is starting to fade a bit. And I look for that to play out probably during the Gog and Magog war, when they turn the other way when Russia does come calling. And that may be sooner than later. I mean, that is my analysis for the 3 to 4 areas that I did mention. And I believe in the end, I think this is going to spell trouble for the United States, where they are going to become less relevant to all of these areas. And of course, I think the next move in Bible prophecy is the rapture of the church. And when that takes place, I believe the man of sin will then rise. And when he does rise, that he will work toward bringing peace to the Middle East and other various areas throughout the world, probably Ukraine and also Syria and other areas. How this will take place, I don't think anybody can even fathom. But we know that the Bible does say it will happen. And if you don't know the Lord today, today's the day of salvation. Don't put it off. 150,000 people die every single day. The vast majority will end up, according to the Bible, in a burning hell. Don't let that happen to you. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.